Oh, I forgot my juice. Hang on, let me get my juice.
Is it gin and juice?
No, it's just gin.
Welcome to Maker's Hustle, the podcast about turning your passion into a profession. This is episode 7 for Monday, August 22nd, 2016. I'm your host, Bill Lavolsi. With me, as always, are Amy Davis-Roth. Hey, Amy.
Hey, guys.
And Jeffrey Moore. Hi, Jeff.
In the flesh, Bill. Hello, Amy. I'm getting there. At some point, I'm going to have something that I can say every time.
Well, I like that you're changing it up every week. It's fun.
I like to keep it young, new.
Bring some variety
fresh.
to my day.
Absolutely.
In the flesh.
In the flesh.
Right here.
I want to take a moment to thank our top Patreon supporters, Scott Hahn and Jim Bashirs. Jim actually just got out of surgery, so I want to take a moment to wish him a speedy recovery. Hang in there, Jim.
Hang in there,
Yeah, saw the photo. Looking good. Hang in there, buddy.
If you want to support the show, check us out at patreon.com/makershustle. We really appreciate it. Every dollar really does help. So, before we get into this week's topic, what's everybody working on this week? Jeff?
You started with me last time, but I will
start
go
with
again.
you every time.
That's
Start
okay.
with you every time.
That's okay. I was trying to think about what I was going to say. Like I said, I just got in the house.
Rude that you start with him every time. Rude.
Oh, goodness gracious. You know what? Because I am trying to be an equal opportunity person.
Podcaster.
Podcaster, actually.
Because Jeff has nothing to say, Amy, what are you working on this week?
All right. So I did what I said I was going to do, I think. Did I say I was going to do it on the podcast, or did I just say it on Twitter? I don't know what's going on, but
What did you say you were going to do?
I said I was going to make tardigrades.
Oh, no, you didn't say that. I
What
thought
did
you
I
were
say
talking
I was
about
gonna
pictures of the meteorites.
Yeah, I did that too. But I'm going to save that to the end. What I'm working on for my artwork and for Surly Ramics and Patreon is tardigrades. I'm like Beetlejuice when it comes to making something. If you ask me 3 times, it's going to happen. And so 3 separate people asked me to make tardigrades, which are water bears. If you're not familiar with them, they're very, very tiny, 8-legged animals that live in water, but they sort of have superpowers where they can survive extremely extreme situations, such as freezing. They can survive boiling water.
Didn't they bring them to space?
Yeah, they're the only known animal that has made it into space and survived. And it's in part because they have fascinating DNA that they have acquired from all sorts of different sources. And so most of the DNA that they have is not their own. It's considered like alien DNA in a sense, not necessarily from aliens in outer space, but they've acquired their DNA from other creatures. And one of the things they've been able to do is when they run out of water, they can dehydrate themselves, fill themselves with a salt solution, and break apart their DNA and live like that, or live in a suspended animated state until the world becomes more hospitable to them. And then they literally come back to life. And there was an artifact that was found that was 120 years old. There were some tardigrades that were dehydrated on the surface, and they added water, and the little buggers popped back to life. So they're really quite fascinating, and they have a bit of a cult following in the science world. People really, really seem to love them. They're kind of scary looking if you have never seen them before. They've got these little sort of snouts that stick out with pointy teeth, and they can bite stuff, and they've got 8 legs and these claws. They have, from 3 to 4 sets of claws on each foot, and that determines the different species of them, and they like cruise around in the water, and you probably eat them all the time without knowing it. And so at first they can seem a little bit creepy, but they're quite lovable once you learn about them, and they do have a bit of a cult following. And since I posted the drawings that I did, I've had a bunch of people want to get them tattooed, and I think that's really great. So we'll put a link in the show notes, or you can just go to patreon.com/surlyamy. It's a public post if you want to see the drawing I did. It's 3 little tardigrades doing synchronized swimming.
Yeah, they're kind of cute.
Are those what they call extremophiles?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So they'll probably outlive
Definitely.
us. They've been here since before humans, and they are, like, people often think cockroaches will be like the next species that will take over the planet, which is possible, but tardigrades are quite hardy little creatures and will likely live on when we are long gone.
All right.
All right, Jeff, I hope you came up with something.
No, it's okay. No, the only reason why I'm kind of hesitant because I really wasn't doing too much making This week I've had full day trainings every day, and trust me when I tell you these are exhausting, they're super exhausting. So my throat is actually a little sore because I've been talking nonstop for the last three and a half days. But I've been doing a lot of trainings on trauma, full day trainings and the effects of trauma, how it impacts development, and some of the things that we can do to kind of help people learn new coping strategies and how to deal with trauma. So I've been very busy, but it's not too much making going on over here. It's been a lot of teaching, a lot of just working my craft and teaching those classes. So definitely a very hectic week for me, but not too much making in that hecticness.
That's fine.
But I do have my 3D printer's been broke. Well, not broke, but I bought some kind of funny style filament, and it kind of jammed up my printer, the extruder on my printer. So I've had to take my extruder component off. I had to take it apart. I had to kind of clean out the actual extruder part, the tip, because there was a lot of gunk stuck in there. So I had to do that. I returned the old bad filament, and then I ordered some new filament, and that just came in the mail. So I'm excited about that. And also I kind of made some design changes and ordered some parts online, and those actually came in the mail. So I got 2 packages. I love getting packages. I love ordering things through my Amazon Prime. And if you guys out there, you buy things on Amazon as much as I do, Amazon Prime is the best thing to ever come to me, especially $100 free shipping. I've only been on it for about 2-3 months, and I've already ordered maybe 100 things, and free shipping, it starts to add up. So there's value in that, just in case anybody was wondering.
We'll be waiting for our check from Amazon. Thank you very much.
I was going to say,
Absolutely.
there goes that sponsorship.
There goes
we just
that
gave that one
sponsorship.
away for free.
I'll hold that one back for the rest of the episodes. No more talking about shipping.
So let's see. This week I published a video for those multi-tool keychain bottle opener things that I made last week. And then I worked on cleaning up the shop because it somehow got messy again. I had all of my metalworking equipment out, so it kind of took over the bench, and I needed to clear that off so I could work on other things. I have some freelance clients that I've been taking on, just other makers who need articles written for websites or for their video descriptions or things like that. And that's actually really enjoyable for me because it's something new every time. It's never the same thing twice. And I'm kind of a novelty junkie. It goes with the ADHD. So being able to work on something new every single time is really great for me. So that's what I've been doing this week.
Cool. My studio's become a mess too. It's amazing how quickly it can happen. I swear it was just a couple episodes ago. I'm like, I cleaned up my whole studio and it looks great and I'm going to do all these things. And now it's a total disaster again.
Yeah, and last week I had my shop all straightened up, and then I
Yeah.
made some things, and now it's a disaster again.
Yeah. My whole work table is completely covered. I'm putting together earrings. And so it's just covered with all the pliers and stuff I need to bend the metal. And
Well, I'm sorry, but I cleaned up I had to kind of redo my whole shelving and stuff like that because I had some new deliveries. And so I took the time out to reorganize. I got all my screws put in by size, so I'm happy about that. So it's very easy to find different size screws and nuts.
Well, la-dee-da, Mr. Fancy
I'm
Pants.
sorry.
I
Hey,
know.
listen.
Hey, I need a screw right now for a Roomba. Okay. Have you ever used a Roomba vacuum?
Well, I mean,
Okay.
I've never used one, but I know what it
I
is.
need an itty bitty screw for the part where the little brush thing that spins around is. If anyone's listening to this episode and they know what screw that is or where I can find that screw or what size screw that is, get in touch with me because I want to fix it. Like the little brush thing that spins around on a Roomba so it gets the dirt out of the corners broke off and I can't find a screw to fit in there.
Do you still have the box?
No.
Oh, well, I'm sure you can Google.
If it's a roller, is it held in from both sides?
No, it's not the roller. It's like this little spinny brush thing that's on the side.
Oh, okay. Because if it was the roller, I would say the screw on the other side should be identical, so you could just use that
there's
one.
just one screw.
Does it have another roller on the other
Screwed
side?
right now. No.
Ugh.
I'm gonna have to
You're
part
not,
out
you're
an
not
old
making
Roomba.
this easy.
What kind of
Making
Roomba
this
do you
easy.
have? I'll figure it out
I
by the
have
end
the
of the
pet,
episode.
the pet series. I don't know
That doesn't
which one
help.
it is. It's probably a universal part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
I'll figure it out by the end of the episode. Well, I'll figure out the Roomba by the end of the episode. Good luck with the screw.
I'm screwed.
Ba-dum-bum. All right, so without further ado, let's get into this week's topic. And this week, we are talking about imposter syndrome. Have you ever felt like a fraud? Do you feel like you're surrounded by talented people and you've somehow tricked them into thinking you belong? Are you convinced that someone's going to figure this out any moment? Welcome to imposter syndrome. This week, we're going to talk about what that is, how it affects makers and artists, what it means to be good enough, and who gets to decide that in the first place.
Yeah.
So on to Amy's list.
So first on my list, I have what is it? But Bill kind of did just explain that. It's a feeling like you aren't really qualified to do what you're doing. It's a feeling like you'll eventually be exposed as not being good enough. And ultimately, it's the fear of failure and insecurity. And this seems to happen a lot more with women than it does with men, because women are conditioned to sort of assume the worst about us and assume that we're going to be judged by the sound of our voice and how we're dressed and how we look. And so we're often more fearful to go into positions of power because we're taught, to be demure and to be quiet and not to do stuff. So when we are asked to speak at, say, a large conference, oftentimes women will experience imposter syndrome because they will have this idea that they're not good enough and that it was some sort of mistake that they were even asked. And so they will often say no, and they'll pass up an opportunity, which is a really terrible thing. And this does, of course, happen with men as well. It's not simply a woman thing. It just seems to be more common among women. And it's happened to me for sure. I can tell you a quick little anecdote about the first time I was on a live radio show. This was years ago. I think it was probably about 6 years ago. I was on a radio show in Canada it's now called Science for the People. And they do a live recording that broadcasts across Canada and parts of the United States. And they had asked me to come on to talk about my jewelry because it had to do with science and critical thinking. And it was, a perfect sort of thing for their show. And it was me coming on talking about my jewelry in a situation like that is absolutely perfect. But I was terrified, and I said yes, which is a great thing. At least I said yes. But literally before the radio show went live, when they were going to call me, like 5 minutes before the show, I was hiding in the bathroom on the floor, like hyperventilating. I was so terrified to go on the air because I'm like, who am I to be on the radio? Who am I to talk to people about my art? I'm nobody. I had myself convinced that I was going to embarrass myself, that I wouldn't be able to talk, that I would sound ignorant, and I was freaking out. So the phone rings and I get on there and I'm fine. And I did a great job. And I was very enthusiastic because apparently when I get nervous, I get really, really excitable. And they loved that, though, because they said it was, it encouraged all these people and I was such an inspiration, blah, blah, blah. But it was terrifying. And I know I'm not the only person that this happens to. I've talked to a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people that in professional fields that have to speak in front of people on a regular basis, experience it on a regular basis.
Well, I mean, that used to happen to me a lot. Not so much anymore, but it used to happen to me at my my old job, the one that I talked about last week, because I got that job when I was 19 years old, and we were dealing with products from these major, like Epson, Panasonic, like big companies, And so you'd have like the vice president of whatever from Panasonic asking your opinion on something, and I'm 19 years old, and I'm like, I would panic a little bit, I'd be going, why? I'm not qualified to have an opinion. Why are you asking me? But it sunk in gradually over the years that it's because I am qualified to have an opinion, and they are asking for a reason. But that's what it feels like, is just this feeling of, wait, you're not asking, there's nobody behind me, you're not asking someone else,
Yeah, or this idea that you sort of fooled somebody into thinking that you're qualified. Like, right. There's so many people out there that are more qualified than me or than you, and while that may be true, you still are qualified and, are perfectly capable of doing what you've been asked to do, because 99% of the time, if you've been asked to do something, you are qualified. But we wanted to bring this up on the podcast because I think that it sort of ties in a lot with people that make things who might be extremely talented but feel like they're not, or feel like they aren't capable of running a business based around what they're doing.
This often comes up with pricing, especially.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like you'll have an artist or a maker who makes some beautiful piece of whatever, jewelry, furniture, sculpture, just whatever it is, and they'll drop hundreds of hours into it, and then someone will ask them how much it costs, and you have to look at them with a straight face and say, oh, that piece is $15,000. And I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I'll tell you how to do it. I'll tell you how you do it. You look them in the face and say, that piece costs $15,000. Did you say 15,000 or 1,500? $15,000. No, and that's where we talked about this a little bit before we decided to say this is what we were going to talk about on the podcast. And one of the things that I think about when we think about the concept of imposter syndrome and how it can manifest itself for different people, I think it's an extension of, or can be an extension of, at least in my case, of who you are and how you interact with everything. So my thing, and I know what my weaknesses are. I'm very open and honest with myself. And I like to make my plans and I like to make my moves based on what my strengths and what my weaknesses are. And so for me, when people ask me to do things, I don't second guess at all. I pull the trigger, and half the time I regret it afterwards. No, I'm serious. I do. And it's not because I may or may not be qualified. It's because maybe it's just not the right thing for me, or I don't feel as strongly about it, or maybe I'm not as interested in it, or maybe I don't know enough. But I go for everything, and I don't second guess myself. And it's bitten me a few times.
Like how we got him on this podcast.
Oh, absolutely. I got on this. I'm like, hey, I have no idea. Even talking about this topic today, right? So for me, I look at everything that I do on a daily basis as an opportunity to go 100%. I play semi-pro football on the weekends. I literally forego everything. I forego my body. I don't care about tomorrow. I care about right now in this moment, and I go full face into it. And again, it's times after the game, I'm like, you know what? I cannot walk. I can't sleep. Everything hurts. And I deal with it at that point. But somebody asked me to do something. I had one person when I was at the last Makers Fair, this guy was talking to me about how I should kind of use some reverse kinematics. So some of the things that there's technology out there that would allow you to kind of position different parts of robots, and then using software, it would then reverse whatever it is that you're doing and put that into code. So there's software out there that'll allow you to do that. And, even when he was talking to me about it, I was pretending like I knew. So we were going the entire conversation. So I was an imposter, absolutely. But the entire conversation, he had no idea that I had no idea what he was talking about. And I was making stuff up as I go the entire time.
Fake it till you make it.
No,
That's
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And the entire conversation, I kid you not. And it's not that I knew nothing about it. I didn't know enough to have an intelligible conversation with another person. So that's not something that I would approach somebody and say, hey, you should do this. But because I was like, you know what? I need to get more information out of him so that I can learn something. So I use that basically as an opportunity to learn, while at the same time just putting things out there. Like, it may have had nothing to do with reverse kinematics, but it had something to do with just positioning and how animals move, how robots move. So I was pulling all these different things in to kind of support the fact that I knew nothing about what I was talking about. And I basically I BS my way through the entire conversation. And by the end of it, he gave me his card. He said, listen, we should work together on all these things. So for me, it's absolutely, I know what my shortfalls are. I know where I'm weak. I know what things I'm good at. And the things that I'm good at, you can't tell me nothing about. You can, but we're going to go toe to toe. And the things that I don't know, I'm always open to learning more about, but I'm not going to let you know that I don't know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that does. That makes total sense. It's actually a great way of overcoming imposter syndrome if you can teach yourself to think in that way.
Absolutely.
Just go for it, which is essentially what I do now. Ever since that very first radio show that I did, since then I've spoken in front of huge audiences. I've been at major conferences, and every once in a while I get that little thought in the back of my head that says, what are you doing? You're just an artist. You're not supposed to be up here giving people advice or talking to people. But I do the same thing that, that Jeff said. I sort of bullshit myself into bullshitting my way through whatever it is. And of course, I do a lot of research on stuff, and I obsessively make lists, and I do my homework.
Absolutely.
But I just have convinced myself that, go for it.
Yeah.
Just whatever it is, just do it.
Yeah, it's like my style of learning. Because a lot of times you don't know unless you kind of immerse yourself into something, right? And so even with this podcast, and this is going to sound crazy because I teach for a living, so I'm talking all the time, but I tell Amy and Bill all the time, I hate the sound of my voice. I don't know how anybody could listen to me. I don't know how.
It's a great voice. You have a great voice.
You say that. I listen to the podcast and I'm like, do I really sound like that? And even though that's something that I believe about myself, whether it's the subconscious, the self-conscious aspect of me, but I don't care because there's something about, just diving in, even no matter what it is that you believe about yourself and the things that you know that you lack. It's something about diving in that is so powerful to me, at least. I mean, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, it's something about the experience and just giving it a shot. Because literally, I have nothing to lose. And we could get on this podcast. And even after this episode, if you guys say, you know what, you should get rid of that guy. His voice is kind of annoying. This won't be the last time you guys hear me on a podcast.
Jeff, actually, we've been meaning to talk to you.
I knew this was coming. It was a matter of time.
Could you do a British accent, maybe? I mean, that might help, or Australian.
No, we'll talk. Oh, goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, Mike. How's that?
There go all three of our listeners. Bye.
Hello, governor.
Hello, governor. We're not doing any British
Oh, boy. You know what I actually get imposter syndrome about is, and this sounds really ridiculous, but I get imposter syndrome about being an adult.
Oh, that's adorable.
No, I'm serious. I mean, I feel like I didn't grow up. What are you talking about?
Aww.
And then something like they expect me to pay bills and stuff and support myself. And
That is a great point, Bill. I graduated from college at 22 and with my bachelor's, and I went immediately into a professional environment where, working for a nonprofit, you'll find people who have been doing this for 15, 20 years. Yeah. And I was actually in a position where I had to develop and implement programs. So here you have a 22-year-old, young man coming in trying to basically tell you what you're doing is not effective and you need to change. And in my mind, I'm like, yo, these people aren't going to listen to me, but I didn't care. I didn't care. And, part of it was I built a lot of good relationships in doing that, and I was able to get a lot of exposure. But I always had that thing in the back of my mind saying, these people do not care what you're saying. You are in here telling them what to do, and they hate you for it. But I didn't care. And every day I did it. And sooner or later, I got out of that. I moved up. But it still had to be something that in that moment when I said, you know what, this is a position I'm going to take. This is something that I'm going to do that I did for 2 years. I had to first overcome that and say, you know what, forget this. I don't care what they say. I got a job. I'm going to make it happen. And let's do it. Imposter syndrome. What a beast.
Yeah.
What a beast. Because it can hinder you. Imagine if somebody says, you know what, I'm not good enough for this. And then you say, you know what, I don't want to do this opportunity. Like,
it's about missed opportunities for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, what's funny is just a couple of days ago, Matt Cremona, who I talked about on the show before, but he published one of his first attempts at a video where he built a project and he recorded the whole thing. And then he sat down when he was done and he looked at the footage and he said, this is no good. And so he didn't do it. And that was like 5 years ago. And then he eventually started making videos, but this was one of his first attempts. That feeling of I'm not good enough, it held him back from starting what he wanted to do for years.
5 years, wow.
Well, no, not 5 years. He's been doing it for like 2 or 3 now. But, for a while there was this period of, I know this is what I want to do. And then he went and did it. And then he's like, oh, well, that wasn't any good. So maybe next time. He went through and he kept the footage and he went through and edited one of those first videos.
And what's interesting is when you do things like that and you see the growth, looking back on it, that's a powerful thing as well.
Yeah.
When you see where you come from, because I guarantee the first time I did anything, it looked terrible. And I probably talked myself. I remember when I first started to say, you know what, I want to build robots. I used to actually I I can't tell you how many Zoid toys, like, you know, the cartoon, the anime Zoids. And I used to order the toys, and I used to look at them and take them apart and try to put motors and stuff like that in them. So my first attempt at making a robot was not even a actual robot. It was more like a souped up toy. Well, I think that's what most people do. But it was so interesting to me when I said, like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? Like, what is the point? And it was so much. And I finished them, but I never like fully went to the next level with them where I was trying to make them remote controlled and stuff like that. It was really just a matter of me putting motors on them, seeing if it worked. If it didn't work, I threw the toy out and went and got another one. But it was a waste of a lot of toys. I got lots of robot heads, little toy robot heads laying around. But just saying, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to go out and do this. If it looks good, great. If it doesn't, oh well. You know, I think that that's so important when it comes to anybody who is kind of doubting themselves or questioning themselves at any point in the game. You could be a pro, been doing this for 5 years, and still have, you know, imposter syndrome.
Well, that's like me right now, you guys. I mean, since episode 1, I think I said that I was going to start live streaming on Twitch. And I even set up a studio, and I have purchased the cameras to live stream, to do picture in picture. But I cannot get myself to do it. Like, I cannot. I'm at an impasse because I am afraid that people aren't going to want to watch me make art. Right? But I haven't even tried it yet, and I've got it all set up. But it's literally like, I'm not good enough. I shouldn't be on camera because I'm too old or because I'm too whatever. Like, it's literally those same voices that try to like slow you down and stop you from doing stuff. And even this late in my career, I'm still afraid to do things because of imposter syndrome. Like, I swear to you, I have the whole little set all ready to go in the studio. I just can't press record or whatever on it yet.
Have you sat down in the studio with the cameras on?
I haven't plugged them in. They're sitting there. Like, I need somebody to come over to my art studio and set up the cameras with me and just be like, it's great. Whatever you're doing is great, and it's going to get better. Yeah. Like, yeah. So I'm living it right now. Like, I'm doing all these other great, wonderful things, but still I have anxiety about, you know, actually taking that next step.
Yeah. It's not a question of your skill, though. That's what I think is the most, you know, challenging part of it. Like, there's no doubt that you're an amazing artist. So it really comes back to, how do you feel about the opportunity? And that is the part that I think, you know, people, we got to kind of give them some steps. Amy, you have any steps?
Do I have any steps on how to overcome it?
Overcome?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to go for it. Like, literally, I have to take my own advice. I mean, I've set everything up. I'm ready to go. I have to go to San Francisco this weekend, but when I come back, it's not going to be as hot as it was. I really have no excuses left. I have to just go for it and start doing it. And if it fails, if my live streaming on Twitch of me making artwork fails, who cares? Yeah. Like, I'm still successful at all the other things that I'm doing, so it doesn't really matter. So it's really just my own, you know, messed up brain trying to talk me out of doing something that could be potentially really great. So I should just go for it. And so if you're listening right now and there's something that you're afraid to do for whatever reason, just do it. I mean, really, what's the worst thing that can happen? The literal worst thing that can happen is that people will say mean things to you. But who cares? You just don't listen to those people. You know, you listen to yourself and you listen to the people around you that you care about. And this is also a good segue point, I think, into what is good. Mm-hmm. Because people, I guess the biggest fear that we all have, or that most of us have, in terms of imposter syndrome and putting forward artwork or putting ourselves, you know, center stage, is that we won't be good enough, or the art won't be good enough, or what we're making won't be good enough. And now, how do you determine that? So what defines what is good?
That's deep.
You know?
That is a big question.
That is deep, boy.
One thing I do want to say, I'm sure you do. I'm going to sneak in here before the list.
Okay.
The way that I finally did it, because I was worried about that for a very long time before I started my YouTube channel. Like, well, what if my video is garbage? What if nobody watches? And what helped me get over it was I didn't push myself to say, well, just do it. It doesn't matter. What I did was I just resigned myself to, okay, the first one of whatever I'm going to make is going to be bad.
Yes.
It's going to be bad. And I'm going to get over that right now, okay? And some people are going to see potential in it, or they're going to say, hey, you've got promise, you work on this a little bit, and that's fine. But I think it was a Hemingway quote. He said the first draft of anything is shit.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah, but just the first of anything that you do is going to be bad.
Was it really that bad?
True.
It was pretty bad. It was, well, let's put it this way. My videos now tend to be about, I don't know, between 3 to 6 minutes, tending to the shorter side, because that's what people have the attention span for these days. And because if you're using visual storytelling correctly, you don't need very much time to tell something. My first video was 12 and a half minutes.
Woo!
And I didn't do very much. So...
That is
you reach the point where you go, you know what? It's going to be bad, and that's okay. Yeah. Because nobody starts out being awesome at something, okay? Like, think of anything else you've ever done. When
I came
the
out
first
awesome.
time, well, yeah.
I was born awesome. I'm sorry.
Nobody except
Bill. Speak for yourself, Bill.
Nobody except Jeff starts out being awesome.
He warned us before this episode, you guys. He's like, I don't know anything about imposter syndrome because, like, everything I do is great.
No, but what it is it speaks to what you brought up, right? What is the definition of good? All right, so I personally don't care what other people think about my, like, if I look at my robots and I love it, and trust me, I look at them and say, and I'm honest with myself. If it looks terrible, I tell myself it looks terrible. If it looks good, where most people think it looks terrible, I tell myself it looks good. You know what I'm saying? So to me, that's what's most important, because I don't make things and I don't do things for other people, right? I do things for me. And so I approach everything that I do, right? Everything universally with I'm doing it for me. I'm not doing it for you. You know, if I was doing things for other people, you would never satisfy other people, right? And you would never satisfy other people. So I live for me every day, right? And if I do something and you didn't like it, don't invite me back. It's that simple. But if you get invited back, that means obviously it must have been good and other people appreciate it, right? If somebody asks you to do something, obviously it's worth, somebody asking you to do it. And that's just me.
I think that's how I started out making art, but once I turned part of my art making into a business, I had to start focusing on what other people thought of it. So I totally understand where you're coming from and appreciate that mindset. It's beautiful. But once you have like a business like I have to make sure that the product that I'm producing is of a certain quality and people like it.
Absolutely.
If people don't like it, then it gets rotated out. I have like a series, I can only make so many designs, and I have thousands of designs that I've done on jewelry, or as necklaces or earrings or whatever. And so I sort of have to be able to define what's good and bad in terms of sales and in terms of what people like. And, that's one of the things on my list as to what is good. Is it making money, right? Mm-hmm. Is that product making money, or is that piece of art making money? And is it popular? That's like you mentioned, if someone likes it, they're going to ask you to come back with me. If someone buys my necklaces and they sell out, then they're good. It's popular. I make more, so it survives. And you can make something truly beautiful and wonderful, and it will never, ever sell. So it's really difficult to define what is good, because it really, what matters ultimately is what you think about it. So like if Jeff is happy with something that Jeff made, then it's good. In my case, if I'm happy with it and the customers are paying for it, then it's good. And in Bill's case, if he's producing content that people are watching and he's getting eyes on it and he's helping other people to make stuff, then his stuff is good. So it's like a really wide sort of, bell curve or whatever as to what is good. And it really depends on what you're making as to what is good. It's very subjective.
Be also everything that you said. So all three of them can be true for one person.
It brings up an interesting distinction between what is good and what sells, and they are not the same.
Yeah, it's true.
And so if you make something and it doesn't sell, that doesn't mean it wasn't good.
Right.
And if you make something and it does sell, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is good. It means that it's popular. But it's an important distinction to keep in mind if you're feeling down on yourself because you're making art, or anything really, and it's
Very
not
true.
selling. And when it comes to who gets to decide, which is kind of what we're leading into, is I think, like Amy, in your case, if you get the opinion of some like rando on the internet who says this is garbage and I hate it, well, have they ever bought anything from you before? Because if you have
I've searched people's names before when they're like trying to give me advice in quotes, and I'll search through my records. I'm like, did this person ever purchase anything from me? And if it comes,
Yeah, very true. That's important.
Now,
That's
if they bought
important.
something from you before and they go, hey, you know, I would love this, except,
yeah.
It's kind of the same way where if I get a comment on my video, like, I love this video, but I couldn't see what was going on in the scene, so maybe next time work on your lighting a little bit. You know, that, and then I go look at that person and they have been making videos that are just outstanding, then yes, I'm going to listen to that. Mm-hmm. If somebody says, you suck, this sucks, and you should be embarrassed, and then I go look on their channel and they've never published anything, well, I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
you gotta watch out for those people.
Yeah, they're not my people. They're not my audience. They're not who I'm trying to reach, so I don't care.
At this point, I think it's about constructive criticism versus people who really don't, people are just trolling.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when I spoke about it could be all three. So you can, if you're making something for you, you can also make things for your business that have to be, wanted and valued by other customers and, content or whatever. So I think it's very important that you do go to whatever it is that people are buying and whatever it is that people are interested in. That's the thing that you have to make. The funny thing that I was going to say is that with Bill, when you were talking about just because it sells doesn't necessarily means it's good. We're living in a society where most of the content that you see online is not good content. It's not quality content. It's people making a fool of themselves and saying, oh, this might be a great thing that goes, and they put it up and then they get hundreds of thousands of views. So it's not even a clear, is it good? That's not even a clear question because.
Well, that's a very
true, popularity does not equate to good because there are some really, really horrible people out there making terrible videos that should be in the trash can of life, and they have hundreds of thousands of followers and millions of views, and so definitely, quality and popularity are not the same thing.
Well, that actually is a conversation that content creators have a lot, especially on YouTube, is because of the concept of the viral video, where something will get picked up and nobody quite knows why, but it'll get watched 100,000 or 1,000,000 times. You'll have like 5 subscribers, but for some reason, your video just gets picked up and everybody watches it.
Yeah.
And then
they did a study about that, about what causes videos to go viral.
Yeah.
I'll try to dig it up if I can. And there's like some very specific things that will cause something to go really viral. And one of those things that I always remember is that it's something that anybody could do, is one of the things that often makes a video go viral. So if you see like, someone doing some silly dance or something, it's something that anybody, like the human psyche can just relate to as being like, oh, I could have done that. And that gets people to share it. It's a really weird phenomenon, but there's a lot of other data points that associate what makes something go viral. And sometimes it is a little bit random, but it's an interesting study. I'll see if I can find it and we can link to it.
But the conversation that gets had a lot is, don't try to chase what's popular. Just try to make what you think is good. Because if you're not being, first of all, if you're not being genuine, people can usually tell.
Yeah.
If you're making something because, oh, hey, so-and-so made a video about this and
following the wave.
Yeah, it got really popular. So now I got to do one of those before it's over. Don't do that. If there's anybody out there who's thinking about starting a YouTube channel or making videos, don't try to make what's popular. Make what you want to make, and your people will find you. It might take a while, but they'll get there. Who says
that your art is only as interesting as your life?
That was Laura Kampf. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. It's
deep.
so true in everything. And make stuff that's real.
I think this episode is all about encouragement. This episode is about making moves. This is a person-centered episode.
I feel like all of our episodes are person-centered.
No, very true. But I think this one is less about business.
And more about
how you can, just make.
One final note from me, at least, on what is quality and what is good is I often think of Van Gogh, who is now one of our most beloved painters of all time, and how he literally could not give his art away. He tried and could not give it away. That's how unappreciated he was in his time. And then I also think about, there's this fantastic letter that you can find if you Google it. Andy Warhol tried to donate a drawing to, I believe it was the Museum of Modern Art, and they rejected it. And this was before he was super duper famous, but they sent him a rejection letter. And this is a drawing now that would be worth millions of dollars. And so even the greatest people are ignored and rejected in their lifetime, and don't let that stop you.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if you guys ever saw the meme where it talks about Walt Disney was told he wasn't creative enough. Michael Jordan got cut from the high school basketball team three times. Oprah Winfrey was told that she didn't know how to talk on TV. Like, all these people, they obviously, I think it was Steve Jobs was told he wasn't smart enough. There was one about Steve Jobs. I don't remember what it was. But all these people, they at some point were told not to do something, or that they weren't good at something, or, you know, they were discouraged in some way. And because I do a lot of things on trauma, I teach a lot of classes on trauma. The things that we're told in our experiences, they do have an impact on you. Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot for somebody to get out of this. So when I say that, you know, just go for it, I'm not saying that that's an easy thing. I'm saying that the experience that you get from just diving in and making things happen, whether or not you think you're ready for it or not, whether or not you think you're good, whether or not people want you to do it, I think the experience that you're going to get from doing it is what's going to shape you as an individual. And it'll either tell you it's something that's for you, or it'll tell you that it's something that's not for you. But I think the imposter syndrome, the thing that kind of keeps us from taking those steps and making those things happen, I think that pretty much stops us from living. And I'm just on here to tell people to live.
Yeah. I think with some people, at least with me, I reached a point where I wanted what I'm doing right now. I wanted this badly enough that it overcame the fear that I had. Mm-hmm. Like, I wanted it more than I was scared of screwing it up.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think what we talked about last week where I got fired, that played a big part, is because that was my something I had dedicated my 10 years of my life to. And suddenly they said, you know what? You're actually not good enough. So you need to leave. And that was like, it's kind of, Jeff, what you were just saying about all these people who went on to be successful being told, you know, you're not good at this thing that you've built your life around. You're not good at it. And I don't recommend revenge to anybody. It's not healthy, but wanting to prove somebody wrong, or just knowing that someone is wrong and wanting to be able to say, check this out, I did it. It's a powerful thing. And that, like, that internal drive, if somebody says something negative to you and instead of going, well, maybe they're right, you feel like it only makes that desire stronger, then I think you're in the place where you need to be.
Absolutely.
Never underestimate spite as a motivator for success.
And I like spite more than revenge. Revenge is a very, very, very powerful word. Like, I heard
That's
revenge
true.
and I thought you were about to say something crazy. But then you started talking about proving people wrong. I'm like, oh, thank God, Bill. So no, but I think, again, going back to, I want people to live. And we're only alive. You only got a few good years, and then the rest of it, you're just coasting. So in the grand scheme of things, and this is how I live. In the grand scheme of things, I probably only got a good 70 years. 70 if I'm lucky. 60 or 70 years. I want to live every day to the fullest. And I want people to live every day like it's your last. And the only way you're going to do that is by doing something that you're uncomfortable with, doing something new. If you do one new thing a day, if you think of one new thing a day, even if it's outside your comfort zone, I encourage you to do it. But don't do anything that will get you hurt.
One of the most inspiring people that I know is my friend Andy Berkey. I have two things that he said, and I'm spacing out on one of them. Oh, no.
It's okay. It'll come back.
One of the things that he said was, if you feel slightly uncomfortable and panicky about what you're doing, then that means you're pushing yourself and you're right in that zone where you're supposed to be. And then the second thing that he said was, relating back to what you just said, Jeff, about how you want to live every day to the fullest. He's talking about how some of his friends have reached a point in their careers where they're just coasting. And he's like, I don't coast. I don't have coast. I want to, if my grave is picked out, I want to come in sideways and on fire. Okay.
Yes. I love him.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
So that's his whole thing. Is just,
I
you
wanna
know
hang
what?
out with this guy.
Yeah. Every single moment he's gonna
Sideways and on fire.
sideways and on fire.
I thought the sideways was something, but the on
No.
fire? Wow.
So just, get out there, go hard, because
Yeah.
and this, we've talked about this before. You can get hit by a bus tomorrow.
You could.
Absolutely.
It happens.
I could
that's
be
a great
driving
point.
it. You don't know.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Something could, and knock on wood. I don't know if that's going to be heard, but knock on wood. You could walk outside your door, right, and something can
Struck by
happen to
lightning.
you.
That's it.
Struck by lightning, and everything, and you're sitting up in the hospital, and you may or may not be able to do something. And I don't want you to, because you felt like you weren't good enough, or because you didn't think your work would be appreciated enough, to have any regrets.
Yeah.
I love that in Chef's World you survive a lightning strike and you just end up in the hospital.
Well, I mean, it's 9,000 volts, and I believe people have survived after it.
People have lived.
I heard a statistic somewhere, and this is completely random, and people are gonna hear this and think like this can't be true. But you're more likely to get struck by lightning in America than be a victim of a terrorist attack. Did you guys know that?
Probably true. There's a lot of lightning strikes every year.
Yes, but that's how. So when we hear, and again, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but we keep hearing all this stuff about terrorism here in America, and it's an absolute real problem, and we have to deal with it. But the fear mongering that we hear, you're more likely to get struck by lightning in America than be a victim of a terror attack.
So you heard it here first, folks. Everybody stay inside.
Yes.
Just stay inside.
And live every day like it's your last.
Go in your workshop, get some stuff done.
Ugh.
If you hear thunder, look
All right.
out.
We're going to go to recommendations in a second, but I have one more quote to throw at you, and I can't
All right.
remember where I heard it. I
Is
suspect
he
it
upside
was...
down and on fire?
No, he's not sideways and on fire. I suspect this was Laura Kampf again, but she might have been quoting a song. But she said, nobody gets remembered for the things they didn't do.
Yeah.
So there you go. So let's go to
This is a very
recommendations.
insightful episode.
So we're doing recommendations.
Yeah,
Are we?
We
Did
are.
I hear that?
you did.
So last week, on last week's episode, I think I told everyone about the Perseid meteor shower and how I was going to go out and watch it and take photos. And I did. I did all that. I did not get very good pictures. I did do all the things right. I just didn't stay up late enough. The first night, actually, I got some good pictures, but I took them in my backyard in Los Angeles, and there's so much light pollution that the pictures came out really orange and sort of faded and not great. So the next night I drove out like an hour out of Los Angeles into an area where it was really dark, and I hung out with some super cool people, and we had our cameras out, but we only stayed till about 1 a.m, and they really don't get going until the moon sets afterwards. So I got some gorgeous photos of like a starry night, like sky field photos that were great. And so for this week, for anyone that missed the Perseids, because obviously when that episode came out, it had already happened, I wanted to give you guys another fun thing that you can do anytime. If you have an SLR camera, you can take some really amazing photos of the moon. And people say that it's a very difficult thing to do, but it's not. All you have to do is know how to set your camera right. So in the show notes, I'm going to link to a tutorial that shows you the basic settings that you can set your camera to in a manual mode to take absolutely stunning photos of the moon. And the moon was full last night here, and so I took a really beautiful picture, and if we can include that on our webpage, we'll include that too. And it's super easy and fun to do. So if you love looking up at the sky like I do, and you love astronomy, then it'll be a really fun project for you to do.
All right. So my recommendation, I haven't been doing too much making, but I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of studying, trying to refine my craft. So I told you guys that I ordered a couple of things. One of the things that I ordered was a book, how to program Arduinos for dummies. And everybody loves the dummy books. And I am a dummy, so I needed the book. And so I ordered the book, and I've been going through trying to brush up on some of my different ways to integrate different sensors and stuff like that into my Arduino. So I would definitely recommend this book. It's an easy read, and part of the reasons why I went with this book, just like for most of the dummies, they really walk you through things. So there's a lot of books online that'll teach you how to use an Arduino, but it's kind of like they put the little blurb on there, what it is that you're about to do. They put the different sketches on the page, and they have like little small notes, but they don't really bring it down to earth for you. With this book, they kind of relate it. They use a lot of good references, a lot of step-by-step breaking down each line of code and what that line is going to do. So I think if you're interested in Arduino, and by now I think most people who listen to this podcast have heard of Arduino, but if you've ever been interested and you wanted to use it, I think the How to Program Arduino books for Dummies is a great way to start that, and we will have that book in the show notes. And by the way, Amy, so I've been looking this entire episode. I've been looking for
screw.
Yes, for your screw, and I found some screws, but they don't show me where the screws go, and I don't know which one you have. So I have the Roomba Pet series, and there's like a 595 and a 695. You know which one you have?
No.
Okay, we'll talk about it afterwards. That's fine.
Can you send me that link?
I'll send you.
Is it like a screw pack? Like I can
Yes,
get just
it's,
the screw. Ooh.
It's a screw pack, but again, I don't know if it's the screws.
Okay.
So we'll find out.
Send me a link.
I'm
That's
getting
awesome.
screwed out of my recommendation time.
I'm sorry, Bill. On to you.
Is Bill still here?
No.
This is an A and B conversation. See your way out. That's what they used to say when we were
I
kids.
haven't heard that one in years, and I could have gone a few more. All right, my recommendation for this week is my buddy Dave Gagne just posted. A guy named Sterling Davis runs the Palette Upcycle Challenge every year, where you take a palette and you make it into something else. And so Dave took this very literally, and he made a palette upcycle. He took the palette, took it apart, and attached it to a bike, which you then ride around.
What?
Are we talking about a pallet that you have things
Like
delivered
a shipping
on?
pallet, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like a big
You
wooden
made
pallet.
a bike out of that.
Well, no, he had a bike, but then he attached the pallet to the bike. It's hilarious.
How do you ride it still? Isn't that like, really heavy? Like I
Yeah,
don't
he should be
understand.
flipping
Yeah,
forward.
no, it's super funny. So I will have a link to that, but his channel name is Elm City Vintage.
Oh, I just got it because upcycle.
Yeah.
Oh,
Pallet upcycle.
I get it.
But
I
I'm
get
bummed.
it.
no pun
Oh, that's
intended.
beautiful.
That's my
I love
recommendation
puns.
for the week.
Have you guys? I don't know if you guys are familiar. Like I said, I'm interested in purchasing a home. I'm actually going through the process now, but I'm obsessed with HGTV. Like anytime my TV is on, it's on HGTV.
Fixer
There's
upper.
a show, Fixer Upper. It's nothing like Flip Flop. I love the Flip Flop show.
I like Fixer Upper.
Oh, okay.
They're so sweet.
Yeah, that's the Texas couple, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. She's nice, and she always does a special wooden table at some point. So I know exactly who you're talking about. But there's this show, and the only reason I'm saying this because of what you just brought up, the pallets. There's this show where they make houses and build different types of structural facilities out of shipping containers. You ever seen that show?
No.
Oh, well, that's
No.
one of my recommendations. I don't even remember what it's called. But on HGTV, there's a show where they actually make houses out of shipping containers. And they use the shipping container as the actual structure. And then they go in, cut out windows, use 2x4s and stuff
Is
like
that like
that.
Tiny House? You seen that?
Well, I think they probably made a tiny house out of a shipping container. I wouldn't be surprised just because of the size of it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those kind of niche shows that
Yeah.
only a few people in the country know about and actually are doing. But when I tell you and it's because of the outside, it being a metal frame, it's a very modern look. Most of the houses end up being very modern looking, but just the things that you can do with a shipping container, I'm thinking about making a house out of shipping containers.
That's cool.
It's awesome. It's awesome. So you
I
can
love
add
that.
that to my recommendation.
All
All
right.
right.
Completely random thought though.
Okay, so before we sign off for the week, let's talk about where everybody can find us.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @SurlyAmy. You can find my artwork, patreon.com/SurlyAmy, and you can find my jewelry at surlyramix.com.
All right. You can find me for the moment at more_4 on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find me on Facebook at more4, but the F is a number 4. And right now I'm working on a professional website page. So once that's up, you guys will have that.
Can I really quick add something? I totally forgot.
You can do
I'm
whatever
having
you want.
a super surly summer sale going on right now. I want to extend it to anyone that's listening.
The quadruple S. sale.
Super Surly Summer Sale. Okay, if you go to my shop, you can get to it through surlyramix.com, or you can just go to surly.etsy.com because it's my Etsy shop. If you use the code HEATWAVE, all one word, you can get 20% off everything. And I'm going to leave that code active for a couple weeks for any of my listeners here on the show. So go check it out.
Cool.
All right.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at One Car Workshop. You can find me at onecarworkshop.com, and I'm on YouTube at Bill Lavolsi, or at makezine.com. You can find my articles under Bill Lavolsi. So I think that's it for this week. If you are listening to the show on iTunes, please take a moment to leave us a rating and tell us what you think. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Makers Hustle. If you want to ask a question, give feedback, or suggest a show topic, you can contact us on social media or send an email to info@makershustlepodcast.com. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and while this show might be over, the hustle never stops. See you next week.
That outro.
Me too.
I love that. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Hasta la vista? Hasta la vista, baby.
Hasta la week.
You messed me up. He said see you next week.
Oh, and there go the rest of our fans. We're done.
Awesome.
Ugh.
Apologies to Mexico.
And everywhere else.